Welcome to Prepare For Takeoff. I'm the creator and host, Terri Cyrus. We're the podcast dedicated to amplifying Black excellence. Every week, we sit down with a proven professional or a rising entrepreneur. This week, we're sitting down with producer and voiceover artist, Nia Watenza. Nia, what's going on?
Hey, Terry, how you doing?
I'm good. I can't complain. First off, allow me to give you your well-deserved virtual flowers. When we first met, within 2 minutes, I was in all of your story and how you were able to make the transition from one career field to another and never miss a beat. Also, we have some similarities in our backgrounds as we are both transplants to the area. I'm not a native New Yorker, nor are you. I'm from West Virginia, from Ohio. That's one of our next door neighbors. A lot of times when people say, when they hear West Virginia, they're quick to be like, oh yeah, I have a cousin that's in Richmond, or I have a cousin in Virginia. I'm like, man, you better off telling me you got a family in Ohio.
Right,
I can get to Ohio in like 40 minutes.
Yeah. It's interesting too. When I first moved here, I realized that Northeasterners don't know geography. And so, we know we're like in a tri-state area, but you talk to a lot of other people in the country, they have no idea where Ohio is, where West Virginia is. They think surprisingly enough, I found a lot of people think it's so far away. But it's like, no, we're right here. I'm right up under Pennsylvania. We're right close to West Virginia. So we are neighbors.
I think a lot of people in New York and just the tri-state area as a whole, they don't feel like much goes on beyond the Hudson.
Yeah.
So if it's not in those 5 boroughs, and we'll call New Jersey the 6th unofficial borough, if the minute you go further down the turnpike, once you get past a certain exit, they're like, oh yeah, that's a whole nother region of the country. I'm like, it's an hour away.
Yeah, it's an hour away. And also it's where, you gotta learn that this country is so much more than just the larger metropolitan areas. Everybody thinks different. And I know we're both coming from a marketing background. You gotta know how to appeal to people. So, we're coming from areas where a lot of people don't really know how to talk to these people, appeal to and move these folks. So yeah, it's important to know everything is not happening right here. So yeah.
Right. And we bring that understanding to the table when we're talking to people, especially from a marketing standpoint and even from a creative standpoint. What may resonate with people in Brooklyn or Jersey City may not necessarily resonate with people in Dayton, Ohio, or Shreveport, Louisiana. So you have to figure out, how can I do something that is going to resonate with everybody, especially my target audience. Like typically everything that we tend to do is going to resonate with people who look like us. We humbly say that is our area of expertise, engaging people who look like us and bringing them experiences, bringing them content that they will appreciate by way of the representation that we're able to deliver. And you are just an epitome of what we like to highlight, which is Black excellence. So with all that being said, talk to me about what it was like growing up in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, growing up in Dayton, Ohio was cool. I think most people will find that wherever they grew up, they have an affinity for it because it's what you know. And so Dayton, Ohio is it's a smaller city in Ohio, but Ohio has a lot of bigger cities that have a lot of rich history. A lot of people don't know about Dayton. Dayton is the home of the funk and soul music. So I went to school with the Kids of Ohio Players and Roger Troutman and Zapp. And we have there's a lot of vibe and history there, but we're real humble. We often don't really toot our own horn or even really have an understanding of our own values. So Dayton was a small, chill, humble city where there's a lot of great people that come from there, but also, and we got a lot of scrap and a lot of grit. But it was just a really chill upbringing. But I always knew that it was a great launch pad for me coming from Dayton, where I think the best thing about Dayton was, I guess best and worst, it's a very segregated city. So I grew up in a very Black neighborhood. And so when we talk about Black excellence, I grew up in a very Black neighborhood, went to a very Black school. But the cool thing about that was I was able to get my hands on a lot of things. I was able to experience a lot of things when I was young. Our faculty was Black in my school and I was class president. So they let us do anything. They let us, run programs. I know a lot of people I talk to will say, they grew up in very diverse schools, and I'm sure they had a very different experiences and values and that nature as well. But, they had to fight to be able to get step clubs brought into their school or different things like that. We had a lot of trust. So it really instilled in me a sense of leadership and that being a Black person, you are excellent just as you are. And I was able to come up in my formidable years, not having to fight people to understand my excellence. I was surrounded by it. So it was a perfect upbringing. I wouldn't change it for the world. I had the rest of my life to travel the world and live in bigger cities, but Dayton is home. It gave me some really, really solid roots.
Now, like me, did you feel as though the ceiling and Dayton was lower than what you would want it to be. I know in West Virginia, I felt there were things that interested me, but I didn't necessarily think I could achieve those things in West Virginia. Did you experience any of that, or what led to you leaving Dayton?
That's a great question, because I think that I don't even know if I would say that the ceiling was low for achievement, because I have a lot of amazing friends that are doing incredible things in Dayton, at the Air Force Base, or different places that they may work, entrepreneurial. So it was more of a thing where if this is the place that you're designed to be, you could do great things. I mean, there is a lot of, in the Midwest and other cities where life is slower, life is cheaper. It is a little bit more comfortable, right? But for me, it was more so that I just didn't know the breadth of all the things that were out there. So I think that was the biggest challenge that I had. Was I started my career with a little bit of a disadvantage, because I had these things that I found to be interesting, but I just didn't know where to take them. I used to do events all the time in high school. I would put on talent shows. I would, anything that was happening, I was the person behind and planning it. But I come from a small blue collar city where a lot of people graduate and they go work in the plants, or our advisors were pushing us to be engineers, or be in the medical field, because that's what they knew. I think the biggest challenge that I had was not necessarily the problem with the ceiling, but the breadth of the opportunities that were accessible to me. And this, of course, is in the days before social media or even Google. I'm aging myself. So we just always didn't have exposure to what's out there in the arts or media or production and all these things. It wasn't available to me and my surroundings.
So I take it that early on in your childhood, you knew that things creatively spoke to you, whether
Yes.
that was something that you may have seen on television, music you may have heard, or just anything that allowed you to think outside of the box, from creating events, etc. So once you finished high school, did you go to school in Dayton, or did you leave Dayton to attend college?
Yeah, I went to Ohio State. So I am a Buckeye through and through. I went to school for sports medicine. Again, I came out of school and I was like, okay, I really don't know exactly what I want to do, because there were things that I liked to do and I enjoyed as hobbies. I just didn't know they were career paths. And so, my parents are in the medical field. Everybody who I know was like in the medical field. My dad advised, he said, why don't you look into physical therapy? It's a great up and coming field. At that point, things, when we were coming up, it was really about stability, right? What can you get into where it's a stable field and you can do well for yourself? And so went to Ohio State, studied athletic training with the notion that I would continue on to do a physical therapy degree, work with a lot of the athletic team. But then I realized quickly, I don't like patient care. I don't like seeing blood. I don't like emergency responses. I don't like any of that. And I think that's one of the tricky things too when you're young, is that sometimes we're expected to jump into and invest into building towards a career path when we don't know ourselves yet. And I had a lot of friends that were really good at saying, you know what, I'm going to continue to stay in school for a little longer and try out different things. And I kind of had this notion that I had the scholarship and I just wanted to finish. I wanted to get done. I kind of knew probably midway through that this isn't really what I wanted to do, but I also just thought, let me just get this degree and I will figure it out on the back end. And that's exactly what I did. So yeah, sometimes I think if I could go back, I would have done what I've learned to do now, which is to explore a little bit, give myself time. I feel like I have to rush so fast through something to complete it, but also really take the time to figure out, well, what is it that I really want to do? But I got there, so we're all good.
One of the things that I feel that our parents, to your point, encourage us to do is find that security. I think a lot of had to do with the fact that, they grew up. I know my parents. I'm dating myself. My dad grew up in the Depression. And then my mom, she was born, I'm sure, shortly after the Depression. So it was all about opportunities to be able to labor, which would lead us to the workforce. And that's great. But it seems as though other communities, they seem to be more intentional in asking their children, what do you enjoy doing? What are you passionate about? And I don't think that people in our community, I don't think that we felt as though we were able to be afforded that opportunity as it
Yeah.
relates to things that may be of interest to us. It was like, what's going to give you that financial security? What's going to put you in a position where you can live a comfortable lifestyle? I think as we've gotten older, I know for me, I'm sure I'm speaking to you as well in a lot of ways, but we begin to realize that, hey, if I don't enjoy what it is I'm doing, that's going to be a miserable existence, regardless of the money that may come with that. And some people, they come to that realization in college. They come to that realization after college. So I think it's very imperative to listen to that inner voice, the things that is directly tied to your spirit. And it seems as though you heard that inner voice a lot sooner than most, myself included, and saying, although I'm going to finish this is cool, but once I get this degree, I think I'm going to pivot. So once you got your undergrad degree, in what direction did you pivot?
Yeah. So before I even go there, I would be remiss if I get on any recorded podcast and say that my parents didn't push me and my brothers to do what we love. That was one thing that they always were really passionate about. My mother, especially, was amazing at exposing us to so many different things. When we were growing up, it was, literally in the summer, we didn't have a week off because we were getting put into a sports camp or art camp or a drama camp and all these different things. But interestingly enough, I just did not. I think that was the part of growing up in a smaller city that none of us were really quite aware of, like, what could this mean? I think if I had grown up in New York, where you maybe have, a friend who has a parent who's works at an ad agency, then you'd be able to see that, oh, this is a path for some of the creativity that I have in mind. I just didn't have that. Right. So I have to shout out to my parents because they really were big on pushing us to do the thing that we love and stable. I was the person who came out and was like, I really just don't know exactly what that is or what that looks like. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. And they've always supported me throughout my career in that way. But what I'll say is that when I graduated, it was just very clear, like, I'm not about to help nobody out here in this, it was kind of more so a thing where, and I think throughout my life, I've had a lot of situations where I really pay attention to a closed door. When a door is closed, it is closed. When it is not for me, it is not for me. And so I don't even know if I can give myself the kudos of just saying I was listening to the inner voice and stepping away. It was more, I don't want anybody in my care. I don't want anybody coming to me bleeding or it just was not my thing. Right. So I ended up just kind of being on a journey of exploration, and I decided, okay, well, what can we parlay this into? And there used to be sales reps that would come around to the Ohio State football practices, and they were there to make sure that the team had their knee braces intact or any of the other devices they need for their athletic care. And I remember honestly what it was is I was like, I want to come out and make money. I think we all do.
Mm-hmm.
And they were dressed so nice. They were dressed so nice. I mean, they always were just dressed to the nines. And it just made me think, well, if she can afford that suit, I really want to know what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up shadowing one of the sales reps and said, hey, I just want to learn a little bit more about what you're doing. And she helped me to understand that part of the career. One thing I will say that I had to fight against was that the university and our program was really adamant about trying to keep us into this medical space. It was a really small program. There's not a lot of athletic trainers out there. They wanted to really preserve it. And so they actually were kind of against us doing other career paths. So they didn't really teach us. But once I started reaching out to other folks and saying, hey, like, what else are you doing with this degree? I found so many different options. So I ended up in medical device sales. So that's kind of how I transferred into that space, was just trying to figure out, how do I take this situation and turn it on its head so that I'm not out here starving? And ended up in that journey.
That was very smart of you, because you took what it is you already had at your disposal and figured, like, how can I pivot to give me that security and keep me away from that blood?
Right.
I'm not about that blood life. I'm good on all of that.
Good on it. I didn't see any parts of it.
Right. But I do like those nice suits that those ladies wear. So if I can stay suited and booted and come in fly, then sign me up for that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Right. Now, so once you made that pivot, did that take you out of Columbus, or were you able to stay in Columbus after graduating?
Yeah, so working in medical device sales, I stayed in Columbus, covered that area. I actually had a one role where I had a national territory that allowed me to travel across the country, but I was always rooted in Columbus. And it was great because this was at the time where cost of living there was really affordable. I was able to, at the age of 27, buy a home, invest in a house, and so look at different ways that, even though I was not sure about what I wanted to do, I used that opportunity in that time to say, okay, well, what I'm going to do is make sure that I'm investing. I'm investing in home ownership. I'm investing, put money in my 401k, so that once I get to the next place, I'm kind of building up a little nest egg. So, but I stayed in Columbus, worked medical devices for a while, and then realized with sales this was great. I learned a lot from this experience, but I would be in sales meetings sometimes, and you're in sales, you're purely execution, right? Like you are given a strategy of, hey, this is what we want to achieve. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go out with the messaging. Yeah, you have to kind of strategize a little bit about how to get in the door and do what you do. But like you're kind of a talking head a bit, you know, and no disrespect to the world of salespeople, because there's some amazing strategic salespeople out there, but we're doing the execution, right? So I got to a point where I said, you know what? I want to learn a little bit more about how the sausage is made. I've been working in business for a while, but I don't really understand business. And I knew my business instincts were strong, but I didn't have the training. So I went back to Ohio State again, got my MBA. And then from there, I parlayed into marketing. So that's how I ended up as a brand manager in the healthcare space.
What was that transition like? Once you got your MBA, so okay, I'm going to transition over to marketing. Was that more fulfilling for you?
It was not.
He's like, false.
Oh, so one of the things I have to say about my journey in general is that I really, if I look back, there are times when I really wish I would have made bigger leaps. At the time that I went and transitioned to marketing, I really wanted to get out of healthcare marketing because, again, I'm not a healthcare girl. It was something that I'd been into, and it was almost like one door after the next was opening up based on the last one. But it wasn't getting me close enough to the thing that really, really made me happy. So I think the biggest challenges with marketing was that I, again, went into marketing in healthcare, not passionate about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here I am now in a cubicle, stuck, gray cell. It was an eye-opening experience for me. I think the biggest difference too with going from sales to marketing is the cultural shift from working in a corporate office. I had never worked in a corporate office up until that point. I'd always worked by myself as a sales rep. And so, yeah, you have to have your interactions with your boss and different things like that, but the majority of your day is yours.
Mm-hmm.
I walk into that space and it just felt like a whole political shift, you know, not realizing that there's certain ways you're supposed to show up in corporate, certain things you're supposed to say, things you're not supposed to say, people you're supposed to network with. You're supposed to go out and get sponsors, which are people that are higher ups that can just kind of co-sign the things that you do based off of the fact that they like and respect you. There were just so many rules to the game that I had to learn that at first were just such a shock to my system. And the work itself was it was a little bit more challenging, and I liked learning more of the behind the scenes, but the whole culture of it was something I was not prepared for. And I do understand that a lot of times when people are especially for us, right, for people of color, like I said, I had a real black upcoming, and then I'm working by myself, and then all of a sudden I'm thrust into this corporate world, it was very different than anything I'd ever experienced culturally in so many different ways. So that was a big part of it that I had to really learn to get used to and adjust to. Not only that, but also just the being in a cubicle. I had to start to realize that is not who I am. So the thing I will say about that part of my journey and every part of my journey, and I think one of the overarching things to my story is that no matter what I've done, I've always given it my all. And I've always given it my all and taken away what I can from it and learn what I can from it. And whether it be with sales, sales was something that I enjoyed it for what it was, but I mostly just took away the ability to go out, talk to people, learn how to structure a conversation, learn how to take my ego out of it if there's something that I really want to attain. I didn't love knocking on doors and cold calling people all the time who didn't want to be spoken to, but there was a part of it that I really got so much out of it. Learn how to just build relationships, network, have thick skin, all those things. Sales was amazing for me. And then going into marketing, similar. There were so many different things that I learned, so much that I learned about strategy. Everything that being a brand manager will teach you, it essentially teaches you how to manage and grow a product. And then you can always take that and use those skill sets to learn that for yourself. So I was very fortunate to have a career where I came in a leadership development program. There's programs out there that allow you to do these rotations. They want to take in top talent and try to make sure that they're giving them positions across the company to get them to learn as fast as possible to kind of fast track you up into like a VP position. So I took an opportunity at a great company, leadership development program, where I was doing year rotations. So I'd walk into one position, have to quickly learn it, figure out how to master this digital marketing role. And then I'd switch gears and go into something totally different. So it was an incredible experience. I can't say I loved it or I enjoyed it. But what I took away from it was so much. It was like a training ground. It was like boot camp for me in my life and some of the things that I learned later. And it gave me an opportunity to travel around the world. I had an opportunity to live in London for a year. I've been able to travel to 37 different countries. It did so much for me, but what it didn't do was give me the thing that I kept searching for was to try to figure out what it was that I was passionate about. But it wasn't time lost.
Right. And you were able to take from all those different positions and apply it to where you find yourself at now. So at some point, you took that leap. And one of the things that I was so in awe of is despite, you having all of the financial security that one could imagine, especially at the age that you found yourself to be, to say, despite the great money, the security that comes with it, I'm just going to quit and I'm going to follow what's in my spirit. And I'm transitioning into a completely different career field. So talk us through what that was like for you and kind of what led you to make that leap of faith.
So I took my first leap of faith when I was leaving one of my marketing jobs. I was working at a company in Chicago that was closing their office. And at the time I was working on a product launch and really, really busy process. And leading the way was like my first big project that I got to lead. And then they announced, we're closing the office and everyone has to move to Boston, or you could take a package and go. And I decided to stay and see it through. And I saw that project through. But to the point where it wore me ragged, taught me a lot, but wore me ragged. So I said, you know what, once I'm done with this, I'm going to take that severance package and I'm just going to move to New York. And I did that. I just moved to New York, cold turkey, no job, just said, I'm just going to figure it out. And I'm going to give myself the gift of time. I gave myself a whole year before I went back into the workforce because I just wanted to have time to think. That's something that I don't even think that as adults we really take into consideration, that moving, being in the rat race, having all these responsibilities, going from one thing to the next, it doesn't allow you to really think and like really connect with what your soul is telling you to do. So taking that time was really amazing because it gave me the ability to have clarity around what was important, how I wanted to feel every day, how I wanted to be able to wake up and do things that I love, because I finally had gotten a chance to get a taste of what that life looked like, right? So I took that time and I denied, every job that offer that was coming my way that didn't look like something that was like gonna, really be the great next thing. And so I took my time in finding the next job. When I found that next job, it was in, believe it or not, Princeton, New Jersey. My dream had always been to live in New York, and I got a job in Princeton, New Jersey, which is a beautiful place, but had worked my way up to become the director of digital therapeutics, which is like this new sexy category in pharma. And I kind of finally got into the place where I had done so many different jobs in this space. To your point, I mean, I was making several $100,000s a year. I checked off all the boxes that I needed to check off. And I'm operated in this space, coming in at director level. And I just realized now I'm unhappy, but I'm now moving further up the ladder to the point where I can't mask the unhappiness. There were times earlier in my career where, I'm a little bit more junior level, maybe my responsibility is not as high. So if I don't like what I'm doing, I can pick up a hobby on the side. I can go travel. I could do other things that rounded out my life. At this point, I was dedicated enough to the point where I had to love this job because it was going to take over my entire life. It was taking over every minute of my day. And I met one of my counterparts on the project. I remember having this pivotal conversation with her where she told me she was a psychologist and we were working in a mental health company. And she told me, everything about my life is about psychology. I'm married to a psychologist. I work in a company where we're working on treatment for psychology. All my friends are psychologists. Like everything I do is in this space. She was like, I know it probably sounds weird, but this is just who I am. And I remember at that moment, up until then, I kind of, always thought like, I don't really know that I always feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm working around a lot of folks that are heavy in science and all of that. And it was great, but it was like, I don't know that this is my lane. And up until that moment, I don't think I'd ever really taken into account that they love this. They absolutely love this. They really, really love the work that they're doing. And even though she, she kind of, was giving her disclaimer about her life in a sense of, hey, this is who I am. And I know that may sound boring to you. It really inspired me to know that I'm the one with the problem. I'm the person that keeps digging myself deeper in these spaces that I've known since college that I'm not a healthcare girl. I've tried to figure out different ways to make it work and, leverage my experience, climb the ladder, do all these things, but I'm the person who has the problem here. I'm not stopping the issue. And so at that very moment, I decided it's time for me to go. I got to go. I have to jump off of this ladder. I have to put everything that I've worked really hard behind, which is, I think the hardest part sometimes is that we're so wired that our jobs and what we do, that it's a part of our identity, right? Like if you can show up and say, this is what I do. And in certain communities, it gets a little bit of respect. Or if you have a certain level of comfort or stability behind it, it just becomes a part of your identity if you let it. And I had let it. So I decided that I needed to just jump away from everything, that I had to quit. And I quit pretty much cold turkey. Every other job that I'd ever had, I'd give them a month notice. This one, it's like, y'all got 2 weeks out of me and I'm out. I had nothing for them. So my plan was to just try to figure out what was it that I really wanted to do. And so I just quit. And I quit cold turkey. I decided I'm moving back to New York now and I'm going to figure it out. And it was November 2019. And I don't know if you remember the energy that was in the air in 2019, but 2020 was going to be our year.
Right.
Everybody was saying, 2020 is going to be my year. This is going to be the best year I've ever had. And so I kind of went into it with that energy of like, I don't necessarily, maybe I'm not in the situation that I would like to be to quit my job like this cold turkey. But whatever, I'm going to figure it out. And I decided that I wanted to try to get into like the nonprofit space. I was like, I've always had this altruistic side of me. I think that that's what I want to do. I want to start following my heart. But I've always had these creative passions and I want to at least give myself a creative outlet before I get into whatever it is that's next.
Mhm.
So the very first thing I did when I quit my job is I said, you know what, over the years, the one thing that people keep commenting on is my voice. Everyone is always telling me, you have an amazing voice. I'll be talking about things in launch meetings and I think I'm like bringing the most intelligent information that you can come up with. And people will stop and say, your voice is amazing. And I used to get frustrated. Like, did you hear anything that I said?
Right.
I put a lot of time into this presentation. All you can talk about is my voice. But it really helped me to start leaning into like, okay, there's something here. That's something you hear over and over and over again. Why don't you explore that a little bit? So I said, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up this hobby as a voiceover artist. And I trained with this studio called that's here in New York. On how to learn how to do it, how to learn the technique of it. It's very much like acting and how to find the work, how to set up a studio. I learned it all in 6 weeks and thought, this is great. Now I have this little hobby and I can have it in my back pocket. Now it's time for me to start looking for a job because I really don't want to be unemployed for too long in New York. And March 2020, lo and behold, we all know what happened, right? And here I am stuck with no job in what is entering into being a global pandemic. And I'm trying to jump careers into a different space. And I think anyone who's transitioned will know that one of the hardest parts about transitioning is, and I think this is the reason I was on my journey for so long, is people will hire you into positions based off of what's in your rear view. What have you done to prove that you can do this? And especially if you don't want to take all the steps back. And so I think that's how a lot of us end up on this journey where we're climbing in a certain direction that we may not love, because as long as you've proven on your last assignment that you can keep moving in this direction, you're going to keep, getting those jobs. It's like an actor who gets typecast, like one of those, those actors that's like, wow, how long is she going to play the vixen? Or how long is this person going to play, the broke boyfriend? Well, as long as they've been successful in that, they're going to keep getting roles that look like that character. And so I was having a really difficult time trying to make a transition during a global pandemic where everything is uncertain and no one is hiring. And so I just, I said, you know what? It's out of my control. I'm going to use this time and I'm just going to play. And I did. I played around with as many things that I can find. I was one of those people that learned how to trade stocks. I was one of those people that picked up roller skating. I was just one of those people that I got my hands on everything. I started a little podcast for a second. I did everything because I thought, you know what? The universe is telling me that this is time that you could be spending trying to look for a job, but why? There's nothing that's really going to come out of this moment. So I played around with so many things. And then I also kept playing with the voiceover. And one day I looked up and I realized I was getting booked left and right for voiceover, to the point where it was just like another job and another job and another job. It just that door kept opening. And in the meantime, I even tried to keep going down the journey of like, well, I do really still think I want to start a nonprofit. Tried to work with a consultant to even start my own. And it was during the transition where Cuomo was coming out of office and a lot of my paperwork ended up getting stuck and hold. It was just so many doors that were closing that eventually the one that kept opening and opening wider and wider was voiceover. So I decided to go. I decided to step into it. But if I were to sit here and say that anything that I've done in my life and in my career has been 100% intentional, I'd be lying. I think one of the things that I realized along my journey is that the best that we can do is to show up in a space, figure out how can you contribute best to that space, how can you take away best from that space, and then assess whether or not this makes sense for me and if this is right, and keep moving.
Mhm.
And I think that applying that to that time of the pandemic where there was just nothing else I could do was the best thing ever, because it helped me to find a space that I thought voiceover was going to just be a hobby. I'm just going to play around with this a day or two, but it ended up turning into a full-fledged career.
Talk to us about how those bookings even came about, because I'm sure that even though people commented on your voice, and I'm sure people are out there wondering, like, I have a dope voice. How can I get some of those bookings? How did that process even start for you?
I'll say this, the very first starting point, interesting enough, was once I got everything set up and learned how to do this thing, I just happened to be on Facebook, and a friend from elementary school, Dion Lack, had just posted, hey, he wrote a book. He had an independent publication. He did sci-fi book. And he said, hey, I'm looking for voiceover artists to voice over my book. And at the time I was just like, oh, wow, this will be so cool. So reached out to him. We collaborated, was able to do my first book. And it was amazing to be able to work that out with someone. This is my first project, and it's a massive project, and I still had some learning to do. But I was so grateful that he took a chance on me and said, all right, I know you've never done this, but I also know you. And I know that whatever you do it well.
Mhm.
So let's do it. And so I started there. And then after that, started to figure out different platforms that you could look for to find voiceover work. This is where I was able to use my sales experience. One of the first things I did was I said, all right, I'm a business now. Let's go and figure out of my old contacts of marketers and different folks I've worked with over the years, who can I reach out to and see if, hey guys, you need the service. This is something that I'm doing now, and had to introduce myself as this, this new person. I know you know me as a marketer, but this is what I'm doing now. And so that was pretty helpful. I had a lot of people that say, hey, I got a project for you, or I've got somebody who I know who may be looking for something. I also took time there's different, for anyone who might be interested in voiceover specifically, there's different websites that you can find that will have auditions that are available. A lot of people talk about Fiverr. I've never really worked on Fiverr much. It's a freelance website that a lot of folks will use, but I started on voices.com, and it's a subscription-based service. One of my friends who worked for Pepsi was booking or finding voiceover artists there. So I was like, all right, if Pepsi's hiring off of Voices, then that's where I need to be. So that was a platform that I used, and I just kept auditioning. Again, pulling on my sales experience and how everything comes full circle. One of the things that you learn in sales is that it's a numbers game. Everybody's not going to say yes to you. Most people actually won't. And so my motto was always, if I can get 10% of the business that I go after, then it was a huge success.
Mhm.
And so, every day I would just think about it from a numbers game. How many auditions can I submit? Because if I submitted today 10, and if you book one of those, if I book one of those, or even one of those, if they've shortlisted me, that's a huge success. And
Absolutely.
so I started there, finding different platforms to use to audition. And there's a myriad of different voiceover platforms. These are just the ones that I use. If you're interested in voiceover, if anyone is, if you just, do a quick Google search, you'll find lots of them. There's also Voices 1, 2, 3. There's lots of different platforms. But I got to a point where I was booking so much, and then I thought, I need to be represented. Let's keep taking this up to another level. And so I started looking for agents. And so similar to how I, use the sales model of like, how can I understand how to put myself out there. How can I put myself out there and look for agents? And I just started to cold call, email people. Hey, this is the work that I've done. Will you represent me? Found a small agent in Denver who kind of helped me to get to a certain place. And then there's so much power in the tongue of just going out and saying what you want or what you do, because you never know who's going to be in the room with you that says, hey, I do that, or I'm looking for that. And so I just happened to be on a ski trip, and someone who's now a good friend, but was someone I just met. I was telling this person, Giviat Joseph, who's a very talented actor, that, I was in voiceover. He's like, yeah, I act and I'm in voiceover as well. He ended up, being so gracious to connect me with his agent. So it's just one of those things where once you get a little deeper into the space, you have to really figure out how to treat yourself as a business, how to go after the work, how to there's so many people you could reach out to say, hey, I'm doing this, but also how to tap into your network and figure out who may be able to help you along the way. So now I'm represented by Atlas Talent Agency, that, getting into this space when you're acting or voice acting, when you have representation, that's when you have the door open to some of the bigger jobs. And so it's been a really amazing journey, but it definitely was step by step, pulling on some of my, former sales experience and saying, okay, who needs this service? Let me figure out how I can get in front of you, and just shooting my shot over and over again.
Thinking about starting your own business? Make it real with Shopify, the all-in-one platform trusted by millions to sell online and in person. Whether it's merch, art, or digital goods, Shopify gives you the tools to build, grow, and succeed. And here's the best part. When you sign up using the affiliate link in our show notes, you're supporting Prepare for Takeoff and starting your business off right. Click the link and start your free trial today. I feel like only God knows who we're going to ultimately be. We're still trying to figure it out. And the closer we get to figuring it out, then that's what I feel like more opportunities will come our way because, we are walking in our purpose on purpose. I say that all the time because, because I know many of us, we're still trying to find our purpose. We're all put on this earth for a particular purpose. And I think God wants us to all find our purpose. And many of us leave this earth never having found our purpose because we allow this thing called fear to paralyze our movement. And as a result of which we talk ourselves out of things.
Yeah. And let me say, I don't mean to cut you off, Terry, but something about purpose, because I think that one of the things that can get so misconstrued for a lot of people, myself included, about purpose is that I think we think about it as arriving at a certain destination and then riding that thing up into the sunset. And I think there's something really special about realizing that your purpose changes in each moment. There's always purpose that in your life. Sometimes your purpose might even just be to walk into a space and just bring joy into that space. Your purpose might be to be the CEO of a company. There's so many different things that can be your purpose at any given time. But if we're purposeful all the time, then we will be able to move to the next thing with a little bit more expedience. I think a lot of times folks think, well, I haven't gotten here. But you talk to someone who is your biggest idol, and they'll even tell you that they're not where they want to be. And so I think there's something to be said about the way that we oftentimes think about purpose as being this destination, and there just is no destination. My mom always had this quote growing up. She had it on the door upstairs, the first thing you see when you walk up the stairs, and it said, life is a journey, or life is not a destination. Enjoy the journey. Right. And it was so powerful, and didn't even realize at that time how powerful it was to really just think about that all the time. But it's so true. If you just take each phase of your life and find the purpose in every little thing that you're doing, then every moment will be purposeful enough to lead to the next thing that's going to be that great thing. And then when you get to the end, hopefully you can look back and say, well done. You'll realize that you've had so many moments to really give God's gift of what you are supposed to birth into this earth, into the world. Can you talk us through some of the jobs that you've secured as far as the work that you've done as a voiceover artist? I do so much work that it's funny. Whenever people ask me that question, I freeze up because I'm like, I don't remember the job I did yesterday, but I got to do a voiceover. It was an intro for Verizon. They did a project with Viola Davis. So I got to do the voiceover that is introducing this project. And then they also cut her voice in. And when I say that was one of the moments where it was just like, oh, mama, I made it. And the thing is with voiceover, which is interesting in terms of other types of production, if you hear anybody ever talk about like working on a cartoon animation, actors that have done voiceover, you realize that it's a very singular job. So we are all recording by ourselves, right? Versus if you're acting and you're going into a set and everyone's, feeding off of each other. So sometimes you'll go into this thing and you don't really know what you're doing or who else is going to be on the track or any of that. And so when they played it back after I did my part and my voice is next to hers, I was just so inspired because she's such a big inspiration for me. I did a promotion for a cartoon for Ludacris's Karma's World. So Ludacris has a show on Netflix. It's based off of his daughter's story, Karma. And I don't have that job, but I was able to do a voice double. And so animation is so fun, something that I'm always excited to do. I do tons and tons and tons of commercials. It's funny because I'll have people call me all the time and they're like, I was listening to the TV doing dishes and I look up and here's your voice. You're in my living room. So lots of, I've kind of gone back into my farmer roots and, with the commercial world. But I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of brands that I've worked with. And it's just a blessing to be able to work so much and get booked so much. I was the voice of Fifth Third Bank, which is one of the banks kind of in the regional greater tri-state area close to Ohio and in the South. Tons of American Express commercials. It's funny, there was a moment when I was in the airport and I was listening to the podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts. And there was a celebrity who was going to be on my flight and he was right in front of me. And all of a sudden I said, oh my God. And he turned around because he thought I was talking about him. But in the middle of the podcast, one of my American Express commercials came on and it just shocked me to hear my own voice. So I was jumping because I was excited to hear me and he thought I was excited to see him. And I'm like, not you, bro, not you.
Like, calm down.
Yeah,
It's not about you.
It's the coolest feeling to be even for myself, to be listening to the TV as background noise. And all of a sudden I'm like, I know that voice. And I look up, it's one of my commercials, or I'm in my car and not oftentimes do I have the radio on, but there's been a couple times I've had the radio on and one of my spots comes on. So it's really, like I said, it's such a cool experience. I think, especially because it is such a lonely career. Like I am in my closet all the time recording by myself. Sometimes I'm not even recording with the team. Sometimes they'll just send me the script and I'll record it and send it back. So when you actually see the final production, it's just like, wow, this is incredible to hear how this all came together. Because you're not as much a part of the process as you are in some of the other form of the arts.
So you said, I can't really recall you being very humble and gracious, but that was a lot of recall on your part.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that was probably like less than 1% of the work that I do. And again, it's such a blessing. I always say you'll never become more spiritual than when you become an entrepreneur. It just feels like the act of God every time you get a paycheck. And that was the biggest difference for me stepping out on my own versus being in corporate, is just that you really do have to really like count your blessings. Every time I'm booked, it just feels like, wow, this is a miracle that out of all the people that went for this spot, you heard something in my voice that made you say, this is the one, she's the one. And that's just something I don't take lightly, but I'm very, very blessed every time someone says, you got the job and I'm able to pay my bills, and it's the biggest blessing.
Look, you're truly blessed. And then at some point you transitioned into a producer. So talk to me about what inspired that transition to becoming a producer.
I like to say that voiceover gave me the agency, the liberty to recognize myself as the person who I always was. The person who I always was that I didn't realize I was somebody who liked to do a lot of different things at one time. And being in a corporate track didn't really allow that because I had to do the job that was in front of me. And anything that I could do on the side, okay, that's fine, but that's extracurricular. But the great thing about finding myself in a career that was flexible, that I could set my own hours, that I do at my own time, was that then I could say, okay, well, what else is next? What else do I got? What else am I interested in? And can I pursue that as well? And so I got to a point with voiceover where I realized this is a lot of fun and it's a lot of creativity, but I kind of miss, my old marketing hat. I miss strategizing. I miss, project management, planning. I miss all of that as well. And so, it wasn't actually a direct path to production, but when I decided I wanted to do a little bit more than just voiceover, and I'm an extrovert. So I like to connect with people, and I'm like, I'm kind of stuck in the house all day. I want to expand. My first step was to look at on-camera work. So I decided, I'm really familiar with this commercial world. Let me see if I can look into doing some more on-camera commercials. And so I have some good friends that I met at a industry networking event, Tiffany Jackman and Orion Phillips, and Orion is a photographer. And I said, well, let me start with Orion and get some headshots. So I went to him, got some headshots so I could just, start doing more on-camera work, and then just started picking their brain about some of the things that they were doing. They have a production company. Both of them have very similar stories. They've come from different worlds and just decided that, it was time for them to work for themselves. And so I got my headshots done. But in the conversation that we were having about why I'm getting these headshots and some of the things that I want to do, we just started talking about different things. And I came in and helped them on set and was talent on a video that they were shooting. And then from there, I, expressed, hey, I'm really interested in looking into producing. And so they, at the time, Tiffany, who's super talented, I mean, they both are incredibly talented and multifaceted. She was both directing and producing at the same time. And so she's like, great, because I need a producer. So come on in. It was interesting that because I took that leap away from corporate pharma, I'd gotten the training ground of what it looked like to do some event production, to work with production company. Actually, Tiffany she worked for the agency Gray that was our agency of record when I was in marketing. So I've been in this world of, developing commercials and all of that on the other side, from the client side. I just had never actually touched it myself as a producer, but I knew everything about it. And so when she said, you'll come in, I'm like, that's great. But I don't really actually know how to do it in this space. And she said, I am a film professor, so I will teach you. And so we worked on a project together, and she kind of showed me the ropes, and it felt so natural because it was what I had already done. And so going back full circle to what I, mentioned before about maybe the different paths that I had taken weren't exactly what I wanted to do, but they were training ground. Everything that I touched before, whether it was sales, helping me to understand how to put myself out in voiceover, or being in the marketing world and product management, helping me to understand all the aspects of producing, all of it prepared me for this moment. It was just a matter of the universe, God, waiting for me to say, now you need to take the leap of faith to do all these things in spaces that you really love. Mm-hmm. So, once I really started going at and being curious and just kind of going after the things that I really enjoyed, and what's this over here? What are you guys doing over there? The timing of it all, doors just really open. And so I found my way into production and have never looked back. Absolutely love it. So Tiffy Jack Productions is the production company that I work with, small, independent, small and mighty, Black-owned, women-owned production company. And we do massive projects because we can scale up. We've got really amazing connections in the industry, but also we do really small stuff too. It's been really fun just to be able to, again, have this liberty to be able to do these things that we really enjoy. And the best thing is that we just love working with each other. We're like a little family. And one of the biggest things that we got a chance to do is, this past year, we were all kind of going back to exploring, what are we all passionate about? What do we all want to do? How do we not only want to grow our business, but like, what do we really want to do? And Tiffany really got into this space because she always wanted to make movies. Orion's an actor, and he's also a director of photography in addition to being a photographer. And so we just so happened to happen that Tiffany had worked with Reggie Hayes, who was the one man on Girlfriends, the guy who played William on Girlfriends. Right. Everybody knows him from that role. She worked with him on a pilot in the past. And he'd reached out to her and said, hey, I'm kind of interested in playing around with something as well. Can you guys write me something? So we all got together and was like, absolutely, Reggie wants us to write something. Let's do it. So we decided to write a short film. We wrote a rom-com that we call I Hate My Love Life is the title, that we just shot. And it was the most amazing experience. And this kind of just ties into, again, just leaving yourself open enough to say, I'm going to experiment and play a little bit with what I really want. We just really go after it. And so we self-funded it. We had to raise money. We executive produced it. We wrote the script. We did everything start to finish. We're now have a complete project, final cut's done. We're starting to put it in film festivals and looking at shopping it around. We had Terri J. Vaughn as the lead. The talented Roy Wood Jr., Daphnique Springs is an up-and-coming comedian. We had a really, really talented person, Meghan Falcone, who also was starred in it. She's an up-and-comer. And then Orion Phillips. Not only did he shoot the movie, but he also was one of the lead actors as well. So it's been an incredible journey, just again, tying everything together, but also really being able to find your tribe. Your tribe is everything, and not in the tribe for the sake of tribe. Because I've had so many moments where I have just been surrounded by my people, and my people that were just friends because we were friends, not because we were trying to network, not because we were trying to get each other to the next level, but just because we liked each other. Right. And we end up finding these opportunities to be able to work together and to be the iron that sharpens each other's iron. And it's just been a really amazing ride into this producing world. So we're really excited about where everything takes us. And I'm just really loving this journey, but I'm at the very most just very grateful that I took not only moved with excellence with everything that I did, but then when it was time to take a leap of faith, at any time that there's moments that I need to take a leap of faith to say, all right, this may not completely be the thing, but what's next? That I just move forward with curiosity. And then I always manage to figure it out by the grace of God, by the guidance of the universe.
This episode of Prepare for Takeoff is brought to you in part by Riverside. the platform that I trust to record studio quality podcasts right from my laptop. With Riverside, I get crystal clear audio and 4K video. Plus, it's super easy to use. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, Riverside helps your podcast sound amazing. Try it out for yourself. Click the affiliate link in our show notes and start recording like a pro with Riverside. As we close out, Nia, I wanted to give you the opportunity to leave us with 3 things that you feel will help our viewers and listeners prepare for takeoff.
Thank you so much, Terri, for creating this platform. As I mentioned earlier, I've always thought I wanted to be in the altruistic and like a nonprofit space. And a big thing that I really always wanted to be my mission was, how do I help people? How do I help people that look like us to move forward? And I had to realize that I don't necessarily need to start a nonprofit, but let me just show up where I can. And this is one of those spaces where you're doing such good work, helping other people to understand and being inspired about what could be out there for you. So kudos to you, because I know it's not easy. But the 3 things I'll say is, I think one of the biggest things to prepare yourself for takeoff, I mean, a lot of people will tell you, read the books and do the 5-year plan and all of that. But the way that I look at how you prepare yourself is so much more subjective and so much more spiritual. I think the biggest thing is get to know yourself. Get to know yourself. I strongly believe each of us were placed on this planet to birth something into this world. And we are all walking around with a mission. And there's something that God has put into us to be able to bring to life. We can only do it if we actually can hear that voice inside of us, and if we actually understand who we are. I think there's far too many of us that are looking for example, a blueprint of I should operate in a certain way. I should do life this way. I should, go down this career path, or I should do this thing because this billionaire said that they did it and it worked out. That's really not the best way to bear your fruit. Get to know yourself. For me, I think it kind of rang true in that I always felt like I was the type of person that should be a freelancer, that should be, doing multiple things, that should be kind of dabbling both and kind of straddling between creative and more in the business world. I've always felt that. I just didn't know what it looked like until I really got to know myself and embrace the fact that the reason I wasn't doing it is because I had all these mentors telling me I need to have a 5-year plan. I need to never have a gap in my resume. I need to, in order to be able to get to the next level, I have to do ABC, because that's what they did. And that's who they were. That wasn't me. And who I was, I didn't really have a blueprint for that. So I had to really figure out who I was in order to live the life that I'm living. Not only getting to know yourself from a perspective to understand how you operate, but also to figure out how things work best for you. I'm the type of person where I recognize when I'm around the right people, opportunities present. So I have to, as a part of my business plan, lean into making sure that I'm taking time not to network, but to really cultivate healthy relationships, and then things blossom. It's a part of my process. So it's, in every way you have to understand the intricacies of your process. Who are you? What is your process? How do you operate? Because if you don't understand that, you're always going to be looking for somebody to guide you and give you direction. And they may unintentionally and without malice, they may guide you in a direction that's not where you're supposed to be. So you can only take advantage of going in the right direction if you take the time to own the process of getting to know who you are. So I think that's the biggest thing. I would say the second thing is trust that every opportunity that you're given is something that's going to lead to the next big thing for you. So I think oftentimes we might think that we get stuck on a job where maybe this job isn't my dream job. I don't really enjoy it here. My boss is this, I'm not making enough money. If you always look at these opportunities like that, like what's the failure in it, you're never really able to understand that you're there to extract something that's going to take you to that next big level. So yeah, maybe your boss is not the best boss. Use that as an opportunity to really master the skill of learning how to manage up, learning how to work in a scenario where maybe you're not supported, learning how to take a moment to even figure out what type of leadership style you really want to work under. If you just sit and rot in positions where you don't feel like it's the best thing for you, you won't really be able to take the chance to understand that this is actually an opportunity that might, if you use it correctly, take you to the next level and take you to the next place. So I think that's another big one. My third, always know why you're doing something. So again, like I said, my top 3 are probably going to be a little bit, more soft, but you always want to know why in any season you're doing something. As I mentioned earlier, I knew that, once I got into voiceover, that I wanted to explore some different things. I didn't know exactly what it was. I wasn't going to create a 5-year plan at that point about how to do the next thing after voiceover. My why in that moment was just to explore and just to, try to figure out and to be curious enough. And in that curiosity, really pay attention and to always try to figure out like, well, okay, if I like this, how do I go a little further? And how do I open my mouth a little bit more and ask people for what's next? But I knew at that point, my why wasn't to be on top of the world. My why at that moment was I am here. Why? Because I'm in an exploration mode. Or there was times when I was working in pharma and I knew my why there was to build a nest egg. My why there was to learn and to figure out how to create strategy and how to understand more of the business aspect of things, how to figure out how to operate in a politically correct situation, how to talk to people who are at the CEO level. That was my why. It wasn't necessarily because I thought that was the end all be all. And because I knew that that was my why, I didn't get caught up in it not being a thing I was passionate about because I was still able to extract from it. So I think that's a big thing too, is that we're going to be on these long journeys of life. There are so many phases that you're going to be in that you may feel like are phases that you're going to be stuck, or maybe I'm not in the best position, or I'm not where I want to be. But why are you there? And what can you get out of it? And how can you figure out a little bit more about you? And how can you leverage that to understand how to use this as a training ground for your next great thing? Because it's coming, but it's going to come a lot faster if you took that time to be able to leverage it for what's next. So I would say those are my 3 things. I wish all your listeners the best of luck in finding your purpose, to moving through life, and just it's always moving with integrity, knowing that you're always working for yourself. You're always working towards that goal and that purpose and that thing that the universe has put into you to birth into this world. So once you remember that, you're going to be great. But never being stagnant, always moving forward. But knowing that moving forward doesn't always look like becoming a millionaire tomorrow. Sometimes it's a little softer and a little subtle. And if you embrace that, you're going to be great.
I totally agree. And once again, I wanted to thank you for all of this good game that you share with our viewers and listeners. And I also wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of share some of your contact details, whether that's on social media, website, whatever you feel comfortable with sharing.
Follow me on Instagram at Nia the Voice. There you'll be able to see my portfolio of work. Follow us at Tiffy Jack Productions. They're also on Instagram. There you'll be able to keep posted on all the up and comings of our short film and all the other commercial work that we're doing as well. And of course, reach out if you need a voiceover artist, if you need a production company for your next commercial, movie, what have you. We got you covered.
I've seen the work firsthand, so I couldn't agree with you more. So once again, thank you for sharing so much of your time with us. And also wanted to thank our viewers and listeners. As you know, every Wednesday we drop new episodes featuring proven professionals and rising entrepreneurs. And all of these conversations, just like this one, will help you prepare for takeoff. Nia, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Terri.